My wife came home from her girls' cruise with a tan, a straw hat, and a t-shirt for me that said, "Somebody in paradise loves you." 12 days later, the oldest friend I have on this earth closed my office door and told me that my wife had spent night 4 of that cruise in another man's cabin. She was on it. She saw all of it. And my wife spent the next month trying to make it about the wrong woman. I live in Michigan, married 18 years. I own a real estate company that I started with one desk and a fax machine, and it grew until I stopped showing houses and started signing paychecks. There are 30-some people on that payroll. My wife runs the front office at a dental practice. And then there is my friend. We met in college 32 years ago in a study group neither of us wanted to be in. She is the closest thing I have to a sister. We never crossed that line. Not in college, not at weddings, not in 3 decades of birthdays and funerals. She married a good man, a union electrician, and they have 2 kids who call me uncle. And I have called those kids my niece and my nephew since the day each of them was born. Twice over the years, when it got hard at their house, I helped. A roof 1 year, a stretch when her husband was laid off and the kids needed school clothes. I did it as a friend, both times through our family account, and both times her husband paid it all back even after I told him not to. Now, the cruise. Every spring, my wife does a trip with her girlfriends. Some years, it is a cabin up north. This year, one of them found a deal. 7 nights out of a Florida port, islands, a boat with 14 decks. 4 of them went. My wife, 2 women she knows from work and the gym, and my friend, because after years of cookouts and Christmas parties, my people and my wife's people are the same people. Her husband stayed home with the kids. I drove all 4 women to the airport myself at 5 in the morning, luggage stacked to the roof of my SUV, and my wife kissed me at the curb and told me not to sell the house while she was gone. The week she was gone was a normal week. She texted every day, pictures of the water, the 4 of them in matching shirts on some island. I ran my office, ate too much takeout, and sent her a picture of the dog looking sad, and she sent back a heart. On the 4th night, I was up late with the dog, and her goodnight text had come in at 10, and around midnight, I sent back a question about what time the boat docked on Sunday. It sat unopened until 9 the next morning. She said the ship internet was terrible. I believed it. I picked the 4 of them up on Sunday. My wife came off that boat brown as a penny and happy, and she talked the whole ride home. My friend sat behind me and looked out the window, and I thought she was tired. For 12 days, I lived with a woman who had gotten away with it. She unpacked. She showed me videos. She gave me the t-shirt. She hung the straw hat on a hook by the back door, and it stayed there all spring. She told cruise stories at dinner with her hands going, the buffet, the seasick lady from their dinner table, the comedian in the ship theater. She told those stories to my face, and she was good at it. There was a cookout on the 2nd Sunday she was back. Both families, my deck, burgers. My wife held court with the cruise stories, the towel swan, the jet ski she came back on, and everybody laughed. And my friend stood at the far rail the entire evening, holding a plate she never ate off of, and left early with a headache. Then my friend called my assistant and booked a half hour on my calendar like a client. That should have told me everything by itself. In 32 years, that woman has never once needed an appointment to talk to me. She showed up in her scrubs, shut the door, sat in the chair where buyers sit, and stared at my desk for a minute before one word came out. She said, "I have been sick over this for 2 weeks." She said, "I told myself it was not my place, and then I came to your cookout, and I could not eat." And then she said, "I cannot watch you get betrayed and say nothing. Not you. Not after everything you have done for my family." Night 2, there was a man at the deck bar, traveling with a golf group from out of state, loud table, rented cabanas. He bought the girls around, and 3 of them said thank you, and that was that. My wife stayed at the bar when the others went to the show. My friend walked the deck after the show, and the 2 of them were still at that bar, and the bartender was setting down 2 fresh glasses. She stood there long enough for my wife to see her, and my wife raised her glass an inch off the bar, and my friend went to bed. Day 3 was an island day, and my wife peeled off from the group at the beach for 2 hours and came back on a jet ski she did not rent. My friend asked her about it, and my wife laughed and said, "I made a friend," and the other 2 women laughed with her, and my friend watched all 3 of them treat it like a joke. Then night 4, my friend does not sleep well on boats. At 1 in the morning, she went up for air, and she came around the corner on deck 9, and she saw my wife at that man's cabin door, not near it, at it. It opened, and my wife went in, and my friend stood in that hallway until she got cold, and the door did not open again. She spent the last 3 days of that cruise eating at the same table as my wife, posing in the matching shirts. She said the worst part was not the door. The worst part was how easy my wife was at breakfast, and she told nobody, not even her husband, when she got home. And that woman tells her husband everything. She kept it out of her own house for 12 days because she knew that the second she said it out loud to anybody, it belonged to me. I asked her one more thing before she left about the other 2 women, the ones who laughed at the jet ski story. She thought about it for a while, and then she said they did not see the hallway, but they saw the bar every night, and they didn't say anything whenever I brought it up. And on the last morning, one of them said to me, "What happens on the boat stays on the boat." My friend looked at me and said, "I am 49 days from 30 years with my husband. If he ever had a hallway, I would want somebody to break that rule for me." I had never seen her cry before that half hour in my office. When it was over, we went down the back stairs so my front office would not see her face. I did not ask for details. The hallway was enough. I asked, "Why did you wait 12 days? And she said, "Because I kept hoping I was wrong." And then Sunday at your cookout, your wife told the jet ski story again, and she looked at me while she told it. She looked at me, and she smiled, and I understood that she was telling me it was mine to swallow. Now, what I did with it, I thanked her. I walked her to the parking lot, and I told her that whatever came next, none of it would ever land on her. Then I went back up to my office, canceled my afternoon, and started pulling paper. A cruise runs everything through one card. Every drink, every purchase, every dollar of the week lands on one account, and the account was ours. The card statement was in my email, one big number from the cruise line, and the next morning I called them, and because the card was mine, they sent me the itemized folio, 9 pages. I printed it and went through it with the highlighter, the same as a closing file. 2 drinks at the deck bar every night, night 2 through night 6, charged between midnight and 2 in the morning, while the text she sent me said, "Exhausted, going to bed early, love you." Night 6, there was a table for 2 at the steakhouse on the top deck, a bottle of wine, 2 desserts. At the same hour, her text said the girls were doing the buffet and a movie. And on night 4, the night of the hallway, the charges did not stop at 2. The last one landed at 4 in the morning. Then there were the photos, the shared album from the trip, the one all 4 women dumped their phones into, the one I was invited to look at, and I had once without really looking. I went back through it slow, and there he was. He was never posing. In the background at the beach, a couple of tables back, over at dinner in his golf shirt, a shoulder and a wristwatch at the edge of the deck bar. The one that ended the search was from the last island day. My wife on the beach, arms out, hat brim flying. The picture she made her phone background for a week. and behind her left shoulder, out of focus, a man on a rented lounger with a drink, close enough that his shadow touched hers on the sand. Once I knew his face, that album was a timeline. I put the folio and a dozen printed photos in a folder, and I called a lawyer as fast as I could. The lawyer was a referral from a title company I work with, a woman who has done family law in this county for 20-some years. She went through the folder without one change of expression. She said, "Michigan does not need a reason. It is a no-fault state. Nobody has to prove anything to get divorced here." Then she tapped the folio and said, "But do not throw this away, because fault still walks into the courtroom. It is one of the factors for the property split and for spousal support. A judge cannot hang her with it, but a judge is allowed to weigh it. A factor, not a hammer." She asked me a question about the folio, whether the card behind it was in my name. It was. She said, "Good, then nobody is going to ask how you got it." And then she asked me the money questions. By then, the business was worth more than everything else we owned put together. I built it before the wedding, but it grew during the marriage, and the part that grew is on the table in Michigan. She told me straight, "Your wife walking out of this with a real number was always going to happen, affair or no affair. The folio does not change the math. It changes the appetite." I filed that Friday morning at her office and was back at my desk by 10, and on the lawyer's advice, I said nothing at home for 5 more days because the filing needed to be in before she could see it coming. She planned a Memorial Day cookout and argued with her sister on the phone about who brings what. She complained about a listing I should drop. She scheduled the dog shots. She booked dental cleanings for the both of us for June at the desk she runs. On the last night, she fell asleep on my shoulder during a movie, and I sat there and let her, and my arm went numb, and I did not move it. I saw my friend once in those 5 days at my nephew's baseball game. She was 2 rows down with her husband. We acknowledged each other. The night before the serve, I called their house, and her husband answered, and I said, "Tomorrow." He said, "We will be home." She got served on a Wednesday at the house at 10 in the morning while I was at the office. The server texted my lawyer, "Done," and my lawyer texted me, "Done." The server's note said she was on the porch with her coffee when he walked up, and that she signed neat and said, "Thank you." That night, I took the straw hat off the hook and set it in her closet. 14 missed calls by noon, and 1 voicemail I have never played to this day. The text came in order. The first one was all capital letters. The second one, an hour later, was written in somebody's lawyer voice, every comma in place. The third one said, "Please call me." I did not. My lawyer said, "Keep it." So it is still on the phone, 31 seconds, and I have decided I do not need to know. I drove home at 6, past the church, past her sister's street, and pulled into my driveway like it was any other workday. She was standing over the coffee table with the papers spread out across it, and there was no apology waiting for me, and no denial either. She wanted to know who I had been talking to. I said, "The cruise line, mostly," and I set the folio down next to the papers. She went through it fast, hunting for the mistake, and I watched her land on night 4, and I watched her understand what a 4 in the morning bar charge sitting next to a goodnight text adds up to. Then she went back through it a second time, slower. She said, "It was one time, it was a vacation thing, it meant nothing." That was the whole confession. And in the next breath, she said, "But you and her, 32 years, do not stand in my house and pretend this marriage had 3 people in it because of me." There it was. That night, she spent an hour on the phone in the bedroom with the door shut. When she came down, she said, "My lawyer says I do not have to leave this house." I said, "Mine says the same about me." So we stayed, both of us, in a house with a court case in it. The next morning, her ring was on the bathroom shelf. By lunch, it was back on. It stayed on until the day she signed. The week after the serve came in phases, and I got all of them. The fight phase, doors and volume, 2 nights of it. The center of it was never the man. She asked how long I had sat in this house knowing. I said, 5 days. She said, who does that to a person they love? I said, you did it for 12. That ended the second night. Then the bargain phase, softer. Coffee made for me in the morning, a counselor's card on the hall table, the sentence, 18 years, has to be worth one conversation. On the third day of that, she stood in the door of the den and asked if I was really not even going to try. I said, the marriage did not end when I filed. It ended on deck 9 at 1 in the morning. She closed the door. And when I did not bite, when that card sat untouched for 4 days, the phases stopped and the phone came out and she went to work on the family. The Memorial Day cookout got canceled in the family group text before the weekend, and nobody remembered I was still on the thread. That is how the cousins found out. By the weekend, there was a story being told to everybody but me. Her mother would not look at me at church. The version going around was that my college friend had been in love with me since before the wedding, that the money I gave that family proves it, that she finally saw her chance and invented a cruise story to blow up my marriage and collect me. Her sister called me that weekend and used the word orchestrated 3 times. I let her finish, said, tell your sister to ask her lawyer about the bank statements, and hung up. She called back twice. I let it ring. Every dollar I ever gave that family went out of the joint account with a memo line with my wife's knowledge and one of the transfers my wife had sent herself from her own phone with a heart in the memo. I did not call one of them back. The bank statements went into the file, heart and all, and the friend. The night my wife's version reached her house, she sat her husband down and told him everything, the deck bar, the hallway, the 12 days, my office, all of it. Her husband listened to the whole thing, and the first question he asked was not about my wife. He asked his wife why she had carried it alone for 2 weeks. Then that quiet electrician got his keys and drove to my wife's sister's place, knocked on the door, and told the family that anybody who repeated the story about his wife again would be hearing from him. He never raised his voice. It stopped that night. In the middle of all of it, her husband called me and said, you eat lunch, we eat lunch. So, the 3 of us started a standing lunch, first Friday of the month, at the diner by the lumber yard. The first one, nobody knew how to start, so he ordered 3 specials without asking us, and that settled it. Nobody called it anything, but it put the 2 of them across from me once a month where the whole town could watch in daylight, coffee, and the lunch special. We still go. Her kids got the truth about what happened. The divorce was grown folks' business, and nothing about pizza night was changing. My nephew asked me once at the arcade if his mom was in trouble for telling. I said, your mom is the reason I am okay. He shook his head and went back to the racing game. The divorce took 7 months, which in Michigan is fast. At the first mediation, her lawyer opened with the usual half the business growth, the house, and a support number that assumed I would be paying for the rest of my life. My wife would not look at the folder in front of my lawyer. She knew what was in it. She had held it at the coffee table. My lawyer laid the folio and the album photos out as a factor and asked her side how much of it they wanted a judge hearing out loud with her mother in the seats. They took a recess that lasted most of an hour, and when they came back, the support number had moved. It moved twice more before the end. They wanted none of it said out loud anywhere. The fight that was left was the business, because there was no prenup. I never imagined needing one. Her side brought an appraiser who priced the company like my next 10 years of work already belonged to the marriage. My side brought my ops manager, who carried the year one books into the deposition, and showed the room what the company was the year I got married, which was one desk and the fax machine. What it grew into during the marriage was on the table. What it was before the wedding was not. 8 weeks of that. I signed paychecks in the morning and sat in depositions in the afternoon. In the middle of those 8 weeks, her lawyer subpoenaed my friend and spent an afternoon asking her the same question different ways. How long? How close? Who paid for what? Her husband drove her there and sat in the waiting room the whole time. She answered every question. So it's settled. She got real money. She got her share of the house, a piece of what the business grew during the marriage, and the lake lot she asked for. What she did not get was the spousal support her lawyer promised her at the start. 18 years usually buys years of support in this state. The folio, the photos, and the conduct factor brought it down to 2, and her own lawyer talked her into taking that before a hearing could put the jet ski story under oath. The first check went out of the business account the month the diner lunches started, and the last one is already on the calendar. At the second mediation, by the vending machines outside the room, she stopped me and said, "For what it is worth, she never once looked at you wrong in 32 years. And then she walked back in and asked for the lake lot. Both of those things were my wife. The trip and the tabs had come out of our account. And Michigan let me say so in the property talks. Every drink that man watched her buy at midnight, I had already paid for. In the settlement talks, the other 2 women stopped pretending. They had watched the deck bar rounds all week and said nothing, on the boat or after, and one of them finally said who the man was, a golfer from 4 states away with a wife of his own. And no, I never contacted her. My friend carried this for 2 weeks, and it nearly broke her. I was not going to put that on a woman I never met on the word of a golf trip. Her marriage is her business. My wife moved to her mother's, then somewhere smaller. The dog stayed with me. She asked about him exactly once in an email with a settlement question, 1 line at the bottom. I wrote back the settlement answer and left the line alone. He is asleep on my office floor most afternoons. The girls' trip group never met again. One of the 2 women called me after the settlement to say she was sorry. I let that one ring too. The t-shirt from Paradise went into the church donation box in the fall. The judgment came through on my lawyer's email with 1 line under it. Congratulations is the wrong word. So, it is done. I did not celebrate, but I did make 1 stop on the way home. I drove to their house, and my friend opened the door with a dish towel over her shoulder, and I said, "It is done, and thank you." And she looked at me for a second, and then she called into the house, set another plate. Meatloaf night, the kids arguing about a video game, her husband asking my opinion on a breaker panel. Her daughter asked me at that table if I was staying for the movie after, and I stayed for the movie. Months later, her mother stopped me in the parking lot after church, held my sleeve, and said, "We know now." Her family had gotten the real accounting slowly, from the settlement, from the sister, from the parts my wife stopped bothering to deny. I told her mother it was good to see her, and I meant it. My niece made the honor roll this fall, and the 5 of us went to the pizza place with the arcade in the back, her family and me, same as we have done for every report card since she was small. Her dad and I split the check because he will not let me take it. He never has. 32 years, and the line we never crossed is still exactly where it always was, and the woman who would not watch me get betrayed still will not let me pay for pizza. The cruise line sent my wife a loyalty offer in the spring, addressed to the house, 20% off her next sailing. I wrote, "No longer at this address" on the envelope, and I put it back in the mailbox, and I walked up the driveway. You know what? Even though she cheated on him, it's really good to have a friend like that because we all have blind spots. We won't be able to see everything. They've been friends for 32 years and never crossed that line, and they had each other's backs. That's awesome. Now, I'm going to talk about his divorce. Remember when he said he didn't think he would need a prenup? A lot of guys go into marriages not thinking they would need to protect their assets, but that has changed in the 21st century. But I'm going to say he got lucky because he only had to cut her a one-time check for her part of the equity in the business, and he only had to pay alimony for 2 years. To me, that's luck. And I call it a temporary inconvenience because after 2 years, he will be done. Remember, men, protect yourselves at all times. As I said before, I don't have anything against marriage because it's nice to grow old with someone, but at the same time, protect yourselves. See you in the next one.